podcast network. What Jay Mohr called me to say. So, the people at Corolla were extraordinarily nice, and Mike August was great. You want to know, in this business of holy shit moments, the real, actual moment I decided to do my own podcast. Corolla is very hard to get on the phone. He's so busy running his own network, doing stand-up, on tour, fixing cars, racing cars, fixing his house. He has twins. He's happily married. And he is an extraordinary human being.
Yeah, and he's also one of those...
He's not... If you're listening to this, he's not like you. He's not like me.
But he's also one of these guys who is incredibly vocal on the radio and on the podcast, but in person, very, very different than that. Like I described earlier in the podcast. Always sweet, but very, very reserved and does a man of very few words off stage.
I don't know how I think guys are on different planets. Like there has to be more hours in his days because somewhere I got to mix in a nap. Somewhere I need to go home. And he's a guy where like he does his podcast. He does stand up at the Irvine Improv. And then he races at Laguna Seca in a race car. And then he flies to fucking England to do a theater tour, and then he comes back, and that's like 48 hours have gone by, and you go, well, I took my kid to school, I took a nap, like he just has more hours in his day. The whole thing came down to, I texted Mike August, and I said, I would really like to go on Adam's show. And then I called Mike August and said, hey, Mike, it's Jay, I would really like to talk to you about this podcast thing moving forward. 2 days went by. Mike August didn't call me back. I was presented with the opportunity to start my own network. I gave it another day. If Mike August returned my phone call, we'd be doing this from an Ace Broadcasting studio.
Interesting.
Still hasn't called me back. Well, I guess now there's no reason for him to call me back. I like Mike.
Interesting.
I love Adam. I listen to his podcast all the time. I listen to Allison Rosen. I listen to and I think Larry Miller. I listen to all of his stuff.
And that's the first. To be honest with you, that's the first time I really understood that. That's the reason. I knew before when Adam did. But
I told you, if they're courting a girl, this is no way to be courted. Yeah. Like the numbers are coming in and turning up correctly, but at some point when I call you, I just need you to call me back from the road and say, I'm excited too.
Yeah.
That's all I needed.
Yeah,
and I give Adam a pass because I would like to have a pass myself in the future if I'm ever as busy as that. But I remember saying to you, this is no way to court someone, and it was all because there was no personal interaction. But you look back in hindsight, the operation is so enormous. It's like the Normandy invasion. Like there's no time for fucking handshake when we're getting off the boats here.
That's true.
So that really was the whole reason.
Got it.
Mike August didn't call me back.
Well, you should send him a fruit basket.
That's one of your all-time go-to greatest ones. Like if people listening, like Barry Katz will say, like you'll turn down, like you won't get a part in a movie, and the Johnny Knoxville movie where he played a guy pretending to be special to be in the Special Olympics. I guess you listening would say retarded. But those of us with special people in our family, we say special. And I said, I actually auditioned for that and didn't get it. And then the movie came out, and it was like, oh, my God, this person's acting retarded. Like, it's so embarrassing. And Barry will go, you should send those producers a fruit basket. Sarah, could you come in here and read what You should send those people a fruit basket. How much negativity is it do you hear negative things about yourself every day?
I'd say at least a minimum of once a week, and maybe as many times as 3 times a week.
Oh, because that's not as much as I would have thought.
This is what I hear. I'm talking about, but I'm
no,
sure.
I'm only I'm only talking about what you hear.
Yeah.
But you're not on the internet.
I'd say probably.
You're not like a Twitter guy.
No, as a matter of fact, I have a Twitter account. I've never used it because people like you have told me that it's like. It's so negative that it's like I was nervous to start. I have a Facebook that's over the limit and beyond, and I'm like nervous to because I'm not nervous, but I just see how it affects people like yourself, and it just I don't want I want to be positive, So, but I'm thinking about moving forward in those directions.
It is an odd phenomenon because I would say 90% of the negativity. You know what? I'll say 95. No, I'll stick at 90. 90% of the negativity I hear about myself is on the internet.
Well, I
think
think
we're all drawn to the internet.
I think the thing is that, and I want to talk about this because we're about halfway through this podcast on the negativity.
According to you, as soon as you leave, we got another hour we got to fill.
Oh, okay. The biggest thing that I always would say, and is just, I'm sure it's said different ways, but you got to get out of your own way. And it's like, and everybody gets in their own way. And you especially have gotten in your own way. So many times that it's literally countless. Yet, you're still a household name. You're still successful. You're still working with people like Clint Eastwood and Matt Damon. You got your own podcast thing, which is at least a top 10, top 5, sometimes number 1 in the world. You go to the comedy clubs, you sell out. Imagine possibly, where the possibilities if you hadn't gotten in your own way, in certain situations. Like just the littlest things, like as an actor or whatever, like at times in your career way back when, like you'd be on a set and you'd be like, let's say there's a delay in the lighting and you'd be like, let's go, Chachi, what's going on here? Come on, I'm on the set, what the fuck? You got the talent here, what are you shooting those elves for? Come on, I'm the guy here. From that.
Now the director of photography hates you.
Yeah. From that to, being on a red carpet when what do you think of the campaign for Diet Pepsi, brown and bubbly? Sounds like diarrhea to me.
End of campaign.
End of campaign. There's like so
Calling
many...
Mark Shapiro a cocksucker on
television. Calling Mark Shapiro
Not
the
a good
president
idea.
of ESPN a cocksucker.
$1 million sentence.
That
was $1 million sentence.
It's like, but it's like Christopher Titus when he was met with Gail Berman and she says, I think Faye Dunaway should play your mother. And he looks at her, the president network, in front of like 20 people. Do you even watch the show? $30 million mistake. So it's like artists get in their own way.
We should have the sound of breaks in our everyday life. It really would be good, because at least you would know when you left the meeting, like, I know when I got my own way. All right, here's the biggest get in your own way moment that you and I have experienced, and I don't know if you remember this. I can't say any names because it's so fucking diabolically bad. You and I met with the head of a network for my own deal. And it's nobody, whoever you're guessing, you're just wrong. You just will never guess it. So just don't even ask who it is. And there were pictures. Oh my God.
Oh boy. This is unbelievable. Let me just, I just want to say this for the record.
The person no longer works at this network.
We're not going to say names, but suffice to say, this is one of the was one of the biggest and most successful people in entertainment.
Was one of, allegedly. So we go into the office, and it's literally a type of situation of, hey, how can we work it so we give you $2 million for one calendar year to not look at any other network?
I want to just interrupt for a second. It was basically a done deal. This whole thing, it was just show up and don't take a shit on the table, and you got the money.
And it was no one it wasn't Eisner, it wasn't anybody we've spoken about. So, because we've had lots of conversations about meeting heads of networks. It wasn't, it wasn't Les Moonves, it wasn't Doug Herzog, it was nobody you know. All right? We just can't say that enough because it's so awful. Oh my God. So it was basically like, here's a couple $1 million for until, I don't know, October. Could you just not do anything until October, and we'll give you a check for $2 million. If you accept this deal and nothing happens by October, we'll give you $500,000 to leave, or we'll give you another $2 million to stay for another 6 months. It was that fucking crazy a deal. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Okay. We sit with the head of the network. The most beautiful artwork I've ever seen is on the walls.
I just want to say this. The head of the network, along with his number 2 person, who was a very respected woman and who's huge in the business now, another woman, tremendously huge in the business, Basically,
Don't do anything where people can piece the story together.
Basically, it was myself, Jay, and this guy with a bunch of women.
His
in the
two
room.
vice presidents were a couple of broads.
Well,
Gay! They were fucking chicks! We walk in. There's a Rothko on the wall right when you walk in, like a $10 million painting, and then there's Andy Warhol's flowers, like the fucking real shit. And then there's like a Mapplethorpe photo, and then all of a sudden there's this series of photos of like beautiful teenage girls on the beach in black and white, like super tasteful and beautiful. And they have like these stunning eyes, like where you could tell that this is like a Latin person with blue eyes in the photo, like blue eyes in a black and white photo.
And young men as well.
And young men and young women. And it's the beaches of some faraway place, and we go, wow, these photos are just tremendous, Jimmy. You know, these are just incredible photos, fake name. Everyone goes, and he goes, yeah, I just got back from Costa Rica. You know, you could fuck these kids. You know, these girls are like 16 years old, and they're so hot, and all they want to do is fuck you all night long, and it's only like $40. I mean, for a week, Barry. You get one of these 16-year-old girls on the beach. You go to Costa Rica, you meet a 16-year-old girl, and she'll stay in your hotel. Leave when you tell her to leave. You let her shout, and she'll bring her friends that are 16. $40 for a week. And Barry and I are so uncomfortable because the person's happily married with an enormous family. And I go, you know, that's incredible, Jimmy, because when I'm cheating on my wife and committing pedophilia, I'm really looking for a bargain. No, not even that. Like an 18-wheeler locking up on the 10, like long breaks. Silence. No one speaks. It had to have been about 30 seconds where I realized I just I'm out on the wire alone. Katz is nudging me up on myself. I'm like fucking man on wire out there with the fucking stick. And all of a sudden that guy, that president of that enormous corporation goes, well, I guess our meeting's done. And Barry goes, thanks for seeing us, man. And we stood up, shook hands with the lieutenants, and walked out with fucking $4 million behind us on a beach in Costa Rica.
And then I called that guy Jimmy and said, you should send him a fruit basket.
Sarah, could you come in here and tell me what story Jay was just going to tell? I mean, but he kept hammering home how cheap it was. It's only $40 for like a whole week. You have sex with this like 17-year-old. It's $40. They do everything. Yeah, I really want. So your lane as a manager is to get people that have holy shit moments and teach them to do holy shit moments regularly.
And just be as undeniable as they can without getting in their own way. And the problem is a lot of times that
But what human being doesn't get in their own way? Fucking Joe in accounting is doing something to fuck his own thing up. If you're on a softball team, Tuesday nights you're in Panorama City, there's that guy in left field that just says, I'm not throwing to the cutoff man. I'm drilling the ball home in 5 runs. He does it every week and it makes you crazy. Everyone gets in their own way. I just think in comedy there's so much money involved it gets magnified.
I think that
your family, do they get in their own way?
My family?
Your family. Just pick a random family member.
They all get in their own way.
So, okay. I just want to make sure comics weren't this special breed of get in your own way bots.
This is the thing.
Macy, could you read this for me?
There's about how many people in the world? I'm not good at this. Is there like 6 or 7 billion people in the world?
Yeah, most of them are Chinese.
Okay. So let's say there's 7 billion people in the world or whatever it is. Okay. Somebody was talking about this the other day. How many people can you say when you see their face, just a picture of them or whatever it is, you identify them with laughter and comedy? Probably about
1/1,000,000%.
Probably about maybe 100 to 200 people who you could actually look at and say, funny, comedy.
Let's take it to America only, because then you're getting into like British and Chinese. There's probably some Chinese comic that we don't know. So 300 million Americans. How many of those 300 million Americans do you show a photo to a person on the street and they say Jamie Kennedy, funny, or I don't know,
right.
person to beat the
probably 100 to 200.
I don't even know if Jamie's on that list. So apologies to the listeners, but you know what I mean.
Well,
100. 100. Sure,
Yeah,
I would say I would say 100.
Okay. So
Steve Carell.
So that's enormous power to have that. To have that. That's an enormous power.
To show a photo of Eddie Murphy on the streets, and then show a photo of like